It's 9 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order, the Board of Leavenworth County Commission. I'd like to invite everyone to stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to start with a moment of silence. I'd like for you to remember a couple people in your prayers. Mr. McGaha, our emergency management, his mother had passed away, and then we had lost a county employee, Mr. Herb Glenn, the other night. In roll call, Commissioner Cos, Smith, and Culberson are all present. We'd like to open up the public comment portion of our meeting. Please come forward and state your name.
Tammy Hain from the Sherman Township in southern Leavenworth County. The topic that I wanted to bring up to you today is industrial hemp. And the reason that I'm bringing it up is because there's been some more activity in the news recently. Last April, Governor Collier had signed in the bill for Kansas to have the research project. And then in December, Trump signed the federal farm bill, which allowed for legalizing hemp production. And when I was out talking to a lot of people, a number of farmers back in November, December, what I was discovering is that it's really not on their radar yet, at least in Leavenworth County. And the ones that I did talk to, they were really concerned about the fact that if they did decide to embark on something it was going to create a huge investment in terms of some of the research that I've been doing says that it doesn't really require a lot of investment. A lot of the equipment that they're currently using for harvesting can still be used for harvesting hemp as well. They just have to make some modifications to it. And excuse me, I also had read, I think it was in the Leavenworth Times just recently, that over in DeSoto they're actually opening a certification program for training over there. I'm not proposing that that's the way that we go, but I would like to see the commissioners maybe talk with a number of their farm constituents to see where they are on this and possibly get a work session going. I spoke with Willie Dove. Willie Dove would love to have a work session with county farmers, and if that's something that you all could provide a venue for, he would even bring subject matter experts to try and educate them on it. The reason that I'm bringing it up now is because March 1st is the deadline to apply for the research project to be able to get involved for growing in 2019, and I just don't want to see Leavenworth County at the end of the race realizing that maybe we should have done something sooner.
Okay. And Willie Dove, he is the one that's most knowledgeable about this. This is something that he proposed, and he worked very long and hard on it. And in fact, it didn't get nowhere for the first couple of years.
Yeah.
So.
And just curiosity got the better of me, so I even reached out to the certification program that the owner of Mr. Good Sense started, and I'm actually touring their facility next week.
Yeah, there was a ribbon cutting a couple weeks ago in DeSoto on that.
But I would encourage that and maybe try and get a work session going because if I'm not saying it's the answer to all of Leavenworth County's issues, but I think that if we don't look at it early enough, then we're behind all the other counties and farmers. Russell's doing a lot with it. I've talked with a number of other counties that are really getting going on it, so I'd like to see Leavenworth County be ahead of the game instead of at the end of it. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Tammy.
you. And I do see Willie Dove quite often, Representative Dove, at least once a week or sometimes more. So I'll talk to him about it.
And it's funny you mentioned that because I was going to talk to Tim Getz next week about some new direction on some things, and that's one of the issues I was actually going to talk to the county extension, maybe looking into that.
Okay. All right. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak? And we'll close that portion of our meeting. Public comments closed. Do we have any administrative business this time?
In your packet today, you have an agreement for the county health officer. This is a required agreement that we have with our current EMS director. He fills the role as the health officer as well. Because the EMS director is a member of KP&F, we have to handle this as a separate agreement because he can't receive retirement benefits on what we pay him through this agreement. The amendment in the current agreement in front of you is just, we've reduced the amount of stipend that he will receive to be a health officer and move that over to his regular wages so that he can take advantage of his retirement benefits on it. That's the only change. It doesn't reflect an increase in his pay. It's just reallocating where we're paying it from. And if the board is acceptable to this, they could either approve it today, or I'd be happy to put it on a future agenda if you'd like.
I've already looked at it.
So have I.
So have I. I think it's a good idea.
I agree. We need a motion to.
You'd have to make a motion
to approve the agreement.
A motion that we approve the agreement for the
county health officer.
The county health officer. I didn't know if you wanted to call him the EMS director. So I make a motion we approve this for the county health officer.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this agreement? All right, voting?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right, all right. The motion passed unanimous. All right. Would there be anything else on the administrative business?
That's all I had on administrative business today.
Mr. Van Perry's? Anything
no administrative.
Okay. All right. Has commissioners had a chance to look over everything on the consent agenda?
Yes.
I have.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion on any items on the consent agenda? Having none, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
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 All right. And
Had one thing on the consent agenda I was going to ask Janet while she's here now. What does
That's fine.
OCB stand for?
Order of the county board.
By order of the county board?
Yes.
Okay. Because Larry Scheller told me at one point it was off the clerk's books. I said that don't make a lot of sense.
No.
Back when they had the red books. So he said that's what it was for.
Well, we can all think that.
if you want to make up your own, you can.
Yeah.
So, anyways, so are we ready for planning and zoning?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners.
Good morning.
This is case number DEV-19-003. It's a temporary special use permit request from King's Construction. As some of you may be aware, King's Construction was already operating up off Amelia Earhart Road when we became aware of this. They requested that we bring this to the board as quickly as possible because they were in operations, and once we found out what they were doing, they were required to cease immediately until they had obtained their permits. Once we discovered what they were doing, we reached out to the state, to KDHE, we reached out to Kansas Department of Transportation to determine whether or not King's Construction had gone through the appropriate routes with them. They had submitted a stormwater pollution prevention plan, a SWIP. They'd also submitted an NOI to the state. They had already had their floodplain marked off, so they knew that they wouldn't be operating within the floodplain. So they had done many of the things that they needed to do. They had not, however, contacted Leavenworth County, nor had they contacted Kansas Department of Transportation. So I had a meeting with Mr. King in which I explained that he did need to come through our process. Typically, they need to apply 30 days before they begin operations. Obviously, that window was missed. I reached out to Steve Taylor at the Kansas Department of Transportation to let him know what was going on. He went out there, he informed King's Construction that they would need to obtain a permit, a temporary permit from KDOT, which I believe they're in the process of doing. One of KDOT's biggest concerns was the dirt that was being tracked onto Amelia Earhart K7, so they are taking, should be taking precautions now to limit that. As I think everybody is aware, the activity that's taking place is they are taking brush from Fort, they're bringing it out to this property out in the county where they are using an air curtain to burn it. They have been approved by the state to do that. They're also taking fill from the site in Leavenworth County and taking it to post is my understanding of what's taking place. They did, again, they needed a permit through us, they needed permits through the state. We have talked about that extensively and they have assured me that this will not happen again. Staff is supportive of this request. We recommend that it be approved subject to conditions. Some of those conditions are that they still need to get us that last permit from KDOT. The applicants are here and will answer any questions that you may have, as will we. Thank you.
Does this require a public hearing, being it's just a temporary special use permit?
Not necessarily.
We got new ones.
Not necessarily. If the commission wants to open it up for public, that's up to you all.
Is there anyone here from the public that have any concerns over this temporary special use permit? Then I don't think there's really any reason. There's no opposition here on this.
Well, I got a point to make about it. Glenberry out of District 1. There's a...
Glenn, could you come to the microphone so they can get it? With our new microphones, we may not need it, but just in case.
Anybody needs to hear me from up here, but anyway, Glenberry District 1, if you didn't catch that. My only problem with it's going to be I think you're opening a Pandora's box, because there's several people been approached before about bringing brush from Fort Leavenworth. They've actually piled brush up on people's property, and then the fire district came out and told them, you can't burn that there's rules against it with the counties that you can't do it. The fire districts don't want them doing it. They don't want to come out there and end up having to put out brush fires. Mm-hmm. There's a house out by 8 Mile House, I can tell you right now, he's got 20 piles of brush out there, and it was contracted, he got paid for bringing it out there, and then he thought he was going to burn it off like you or I burn a brush pile at our own house, and the fire district come out and said, no, you can't do that.
Well, they addressed that in this, the fire department and emergency management in this packet. I don't know, you probably didn't get it this packet, no. But it's quite lengthy, but it was addressed.
And the fire district's good with it?
Yes.
May I ask?
Yes.
May I ask a question?
Yes,
or I guess it's for the King Construction. Because I found out that the work had started without the proper permitting and things, I just kind of really dug deep. And I have a question as to why on the NOI, the coordinates that have been provided to KDHE are the coordinates that appear to be for Fort Leavenworth, not the Barrow site. So actually then the permit was issued for a wetland, which I don't believe was the intent, because you can't get the permit for a wetland, but the coordinates provided in the NOI, the latitude and longitude, drop, because I went and looked at Fort Leavenworth, or right there on the river. So I question how that permit was approved by KDHE to begin with, because it would be the Corps of Engineers for that specific latitude and longitude would have to be the Corps of Engineers or the EPA to approve that permit. So it's just a question of curiosity.
I'll have the applicant answer that question,
okay,
if they can come forward.
Yes, sir.
Well, I think you're a little confused on what our NOI was pertaining to. Our NOI is for Barrow Pit, not on the federal ground. Okay, they've already obtained their own set of stuff that they're supposed to have and required to have. What we have is an NOI for borrow and taking trees out and burning brush on Mr. Forgey's land.
Okay, so the coordinates that you provided in the NOI on the application, where are they?
They're
At what
out on Tim
location?
Forgey's place.
No, they are not.
Yes, they are.
No, the coordinates that you provided, I put into the wetlands thing that you had, the maps, and so I looked it up on the internet, and I put the coordinates into, I can show you a picture, I printed it off, where the coordinates drop.
The coordinates have to be right because the state approved it. And they
Well,
looked at that, and that's where they have to, at that said site, they have to, in order to prove it, they have to have the right area and the right location.
Well, I have phone calls into KDHE too, because I am curious as to, did they not look? I'm just saying that
They looked because we submitted a picture to them. And we
yes, you
showed 'em.
submitted a picture of the plan, I have that. But the coordinates that were provided to KDHE on the NOI were coordinates at Fort Leavenworth.
And if that's an issue, then we will, and you have a call in KDHE, I will reach out to KDHE as well, and that will be corrected.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was a mistake on our part, and they didn't catch it either. So that's just something that needs to be corrected. That was not, obviously that wasn't intentional. So,
Yeah, and that,
the coordinates need to be corrected to the Forgey property level of our website.
Commissioners, we'll follow up on that and make sure it's the correct one.
that was what I was going to suggest, is a lot of times the lat longs and the legal descriptions aren't checked real close when they, in situations like this, so if it needs to be addressed and get it corrected.
Well, like Taylor says, if anything needs to be corrected, we will do that.
Yeah, that's usually the first thing that they don't check is legal descriptions and latitude and longitude, so.
Yeah, they approve that of a picture and a site, and we don't really, I mean, it's an oversight possibly on their part and our part, if that's the case.
No, I agree. And then I have a couple other questions. I drove out, and I didn't see good marking for trucks entering the highway onto 7 Highway, which I have concerns with, and I think that needs to be done. And also, as I drove out there, I noted that there was a very large stockpile of dirt, and I did not see any erosion control around that.
Well, we've got erosion control down on the, according to the SWIP on the downside of it, there is erosion control in place.
Okay, and is there fencing along the wetland?
Yes, it's a silt fence.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so if we go out and look today, that will be there?
I
It's
saw
there.
it.
Okay,
It's-
good.
I saw it this
Okay,
morning.
I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm
It's
just,
there.
Is the
The
silt?
stockpile is to, when we're all said and done, is to dress this place up, to reseed it and get it. We're just move it up there in a big pile for now to get it out of the way until we get our material needed, and then we replace it and we reseed it, and it's green as it looked before.
okay, and may I ask why you began without the proper permitting to begin with?
Lack of education, I guess. We didn't know, like I was telling Crystal, it was an honest mistake. We have done other projects that in certain counties that we didn't have to have it. I guess they weren't zone counties or something, and we just did not know. And it was an honest mistake.
Haven't you been working in Leavenworth County for some time, though? I mean, I'm just curious as to why it didn't occur in the proper sequence of time. I mean, to get the job started.
Again, it was an honest mistake. I did not know. We did not know. Yes, we have worked in Leavenworth County before, and we've never had this come up, to be honest with you.
And you didn't know that you'd need a permit from KDOT to transport on the state highway?
Well, we've sent in for the NOI, and we thought they talked to each other, I guess, and they don't. It come to our attention, they don't necessarily communicate. Crystal brought that to my attention, and she was the one that told me that.
I just had a couple things. The silt fence, I saw it this morning, so there's the black plastic silt fence up, but is that also, has it been surveyed that that's to keep them off the
Yes, sir.
floodplain? Okay,
Yeah.
so it's one and the same. That's the fence, to
Yep,
mark the.
it's the fence, and it's marking
Okay.
where to stay out of, and it's
Okay.
also there to restrain any soil from getting down.
Right. And then curtain burn, is it going to be curtain burn tanks out
Yes.
there? Are they already there? Or they're
No, we haven't got it there yet, but we will put it in place before.
That's what they decided to
Yes.
use? I didn't know if they were
Yes,
just
we
gonna
have to
pit burn or, okay.
use a curtain burner.
And then just the last thing I had was, I wouldn't recommend fines. I didn't know if there were going to be any fines involved, because I know previously I've seen this come up where a taxpayer got a permit to build a home, had some brush cleared, and then leveled the pad site, and then was going to be fined for starting the construction before he got his permit actually all the way through. He had applied for a permit, but didn't get the permit actually approved yet, and the county was going to fine him for starting construction. So I just want to make sure that wasn't an issue here.
Correct. That's per the regulations. If somebody starts construction on a building, then we have a double fee, what's called a double fee. They have to pay double the fees. And that's only for building permits. We don't have that for TSUPs.
Okay.
That's something, if the commissioners want to do it, we can add it to the regulations.
No, I was just actually making sure it wasn't going to be a fine process.
No, sir.
Okay.
Commissioners have any other questions of Mr. King?
I don't.
I want to make sure that nothing like this happens again with Mr. King or any other contractor. I mean, we really have to make sure that we are adhering to the codes and the requirements of the county. And I don't know, to me, there's lost credibility, because I honestly find it difficult to believe that you did not know you needed to have permits from KDOT, and that you did not need burn permits, special use. Sure.
I'm Kent King. I'm president of King's Construction. I did talk with Mr. David Van Peer about this. What came to my attention was that we needed a permit after we started. I just finished a job for you guys, 147th Street. I was not told I needed any permit, so I didn't think I needed one out there. So we didn't apply for one. And I did talk to David Van Peer, and I told David, we got an issue here, what I need to do about it. And I told we will get the permit and we'll get the process started. And we go from county to county. We work all over. I've worked in Shawnee County. I've worked in Jefferson County, Douglas County. You're all not the same, believe me.
So none of those other counties require burn permit? Special use permits to burn? I'm just curious.
Burn permits, yes, and we did get a burn permit. We did not burn without letting somebody know we were burning. We had a permit every day we burned. Some counties will require that you have a curtain burner. Some counties will not. And we burned, I'm going to tell you right now, we burned on your project out on 147th Street. We had a burn permit every day we burned, but we did not have a curtain burner because we were not told we had to have one.
Okay.
Shawnee County is absolute. Going in, you're going to have a burn permit or have to have a curtain burner. And all a curtain burner is just a machine that blows air, and it helps keep the smoke down. I mean, it's not a real big deal, but we acquired one of them probably 15 years ago. And I guess I got to plead ignorance in the fact that we did a job right out here, and I was not told I had to have a borrow agreement. Well, we had an agreement with the landowner, but we were not told we had to get a conditional use permit.
Okay.
So then I talked with somebody with the county zoning, and they said, well, somebody in the county was handling that for you, whether you knew it or not. And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't know it. And I'm not.
I understand.
I've done quite a few other jobs in Leavenworth County, and I've had a borrow permit, and I've never been told that I had to have a conditional use permit for it. And I'm not trying to play hardball, I'm just being honest with you. And I have to plead ignorance to the fact. So we were all caught off guard here. And once again, Chris stated to the fact that when we applied for an NOI, we got the NOI from the state, and apparently they don't communicate with the Department of Transportation, and we were not told that we were going to have any special thing from KDOT saying we were entering the highway. And honestly, we put up signs, and we did have trucks entering the road signs on the job where we were entering. I mean, it wasn't like there was a truck every minute, but we had quite a few trucks. I'm not going to tell you that we didn't. I mean, so I just got to tell you, there was no intent of not doing things unlawfully, because I guess it's just ignorance on our part a little bit. But you know, I was told, we were told we didn't even need a permit for a borrow pit. Our permit was more for the trees. We had to get a permit for the trees. So we were caught a little off guard. And you know, if the trees are going to be a big issue and you feel like we can't get a permit for that, we'll haul the trees somewhere else. But and we did haul quite a few trees somewhere else. We took them out of county. And you know, I'm sorry. I have to say that I did talk with some of the people involved in the zoning and planning, and they came and seen us, and there was a little bit of one person saying one thing and another person saying another. So we were caught a little bit off guard here, and I hope I haven't caused the county distress here in any way, shape, or form. And it was not our intent. So we spent all last year on 147th Street, and we burnt a lot. And we did not, other than calling it in with the fire department, which we did every time we burned it. So I got, you know, one place we did one thing, and then we get our hand slapped going somewhere else. So from now on, we know.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you.
And I know you can clear trees and haul dirt in smaller jobs without a permit, but what was the, this question is for Crystal and Jeff, what was the criteria that made this unique that you were required to get a special use permit?
Well, anytime if it affects neighboring properties, they are required to get a temporary special use permit. So anytime it becomes a nuisance or something along that line, then we require them to get a permit.
Okay, because I know smaller jobs, you don't need a permit. So
Yeah,
I thought maybe it was size.
Yeah, if it's just grading or something like that, that's...
Okay. So you probably did a lot of work that didn't need permits. So that's why I think this was just a unique situation.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have. We've done a lot of small jobs that I know didn't need permits, but it's, you know, it's kind of like we did 147th Street, and, you know, I worked with everybody concerned in the county here, and we never heard any, you know, you got to have this permit or that to do this.
But it didn't affect neighbor properties, so.
Yeah, in this case, I mean, they have trucks coming in and they're using the state highway, so, you know, we need to monitor some of that because they're hauling, you know, dirt everywhere. It's kind of...
How long do you think construction will take to the end of the job? Roughly.
Oh, you know, weather's playing a big part in this right now.
Just roughly.
Honestly, the borrow pit, hauling out of the borrow pit at the very most, more than likely 6 weeks to 2 months, at the very most.
Okay.
And more than likely, it won't be every day.
Okay. And did I notice a mailbox put up at the driveway?
Yes, sir.
Is that for emergency?
You have to do that.
For emergency?
No, that's for the SWIP.
Oh, okay.
That's for the NOI SWIP, basically stating that what your erosion control plan is. If you look in there, there's a plan that shows what we were supposed to have the silt fence up, which the silt fence is there. And there is a plan for that.
Okay.
And it was approved by the state.
Okay. I think that's what was throwing a lot of people, I think, as they saw the mailbox. So everybody thought they was building a house.
Yeah, we're not moving in.
How long have you been operating?
I'm sorry?
How long have you been operating on that piece of property?
We were there probably, I can't say for sure. We didn't, we started stripping first.
3 months, a month, what?
Oh, we were there a couple of weeks, I would guess.
You've been there since the first of the year.
That was after the first of the year. It wasn't the first of the year.
Okay.
We didn't get our notice to proceed on the fort job until then. You know, we submitted pictures and this coordinate issue, the coordinates are wrong. We will see to it that they are right.
I just,
That
you know,
That was an issue that I don't know how that got listed wrong when the picture shows exactly where it's at.
oh, I agree. I'm not blaming you guys as much as I am that there was not a good review, from my point of view, by the state, who was requiring all of this, and they approved an NOI that did not match up with the photos that were provided.
Right.
So, you know, and with the plan that you had provided to them as well. So I'm just saying, it's just, you know, we have all the regulations that we're supposed to adhere to, and it is for a purpose. We need to protect the wetlands, and we need to protect,
Sure.
you know, all of those things. But at the same time, we need to make certain that everyone is appropriately doing their jobs.
Right, and once again, I'm sorry if we got the wrong coordinates. I do not know how we got the wrong coordinates, other than if somebody copied the coordinates off of the Leavenworth County project and put it, you know, from the fort site, and put it on there. Apparently that's what happened. But, you know, we showed the pictures, and I think we told where we thought we were at. I just guess it got on the plan wrong. And I mean, it was approved by the state. They had looked at, and they usually are supposed to go out and actually look at the site, but I don't know if they did or not. I can't answer for them. Okay.
On his timeline, there is a second part of that is a phasing where they go and they are digging their building site in, and that's going to happen this summer, and we'll actually be hauling dirt back in. So we're going to be replacing a lot of the dirt that comes out. We're going to be replacing it with clean dirt. It's native dirt off of the fort that's going to go back in there. So that 2 months that he's saying, there'll be a delay period in there as we get the parking lot done. We're going to go in and get a building ready for them, and that requires us to remove dirt from the site and haul it back into Mr. Forgey's property. So there'll be another time period. It could be this June sometime when we're hauling it back out of there. That's another thing I just wanted to make sure you know.
Is there a time limit on these permits? 1 year, Jeff or Chris?
This one's for 3 months is what they're asking for.
Okay, so
Originally.
need another one?
That'll probably
down the
cover it.
road?
Yeah, did he say 8 months?
3 months.
3 months?
You said the permit phase, which is approximately 3 months. So that's what we were.
If there's no other engineering or any other plans that need to be done or studies, can we just extend the life of this one so they don't have to come back?
I think we're going to have to, just because
save everybody
of the
time.
timing of that other building pad, you know, when it's all finished. And
instead of going through all this again, just
yeah.
extend the time.
Yeah, I thought we better bring that up while we're here.
Make it like 9 months.
Sure. Yeah, that's
something like that. You have to give them most of the rest of the year.
Yeah, some of them are approved for a year. I mean, 9 months is certainly.
You think that would work, Mr. King? Not extending it to 9 months instead of 3? Or do you need a year? No. While we're at it? Okay. Just to make sure so we don't have to make everybody go through.
Yeah, I think that'll work.
Okay.
Have any more questions of the applicant?
I have a question real quick on the signage that was stated. We just want to, so we don't get in any more issues, are there any specific, we do have signage out there. There are 2 signs that say trucks entering and entering highway. They are not up when we are not hauling. So if you would go out there this morning, they're not up because we're not hauling. They are put up right before we start hauling, and at the end of the day, they're taken down. Are there any other requirements that Leavenworth County is wanting us to put up? Obviously, we want everybody to be safe there also,
Right.
and we want to look out for the general public as well. We feel that those 2 signs are sufficient, but if there are other comments that need to be addressed, then please let us know.
Only other thing I was thinking about is, did you guys gravel down the driveway that they're coming out to keep
That is going
some
to
of the
be, that
mud
is a
off the highway?
requirement. KDOT has, once
saw
they
that in
approve the
there.
permit, that will be a requirement. We will lay some sort of aggregate down there that the truck drivers will drive over before they pull on site, or before they pull onto the highway. That will eliminate a lot of the mud that's coming back onto the highway.
We did gravel it a couple times on that too, but they're going to require us to put bigger rock down as well.
Okay, and just because I think that one of the other issues I heard mentioned was the dust. So trying to keep it wetted down so that there's not the dust that's coming up as well, because that's a highway. So I mean, just to make sure that safety is, and I know for you too, is paramount.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and the aggregate that KDOT is requiring will eliminate a lot of that. It will help with that a lot. So.
Well, I noticed in the beginning when the trucks were pulling out with the muddy wheels, they were pulling out into the traffic lanes. And then shortly after that, they started going up the hill in the side lanes instead. And that kept a lot of traffic from driving through the mud and creating a lot of the dust.
Yeah, we all realized that there was an issue there once we started hauling once there was a lot of traffic in and out there, we all realized that there was a safety issue with that. So we tried to control it a little bit better than what we had been doing.
thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't have any.
Consider a motion to approve case DEV 19-003.
Do we need to amend it to be a 9-month?
Yeah, we'd like to add a condition that says, the permit is applicable for nine months.
And they need to receive the KDOT permit.
And
Yes.
prior
all the
to
other
issuing.
permits.
stipulate all the necessary permits and legal descriptions.
Right, and all of the requests from emergency management
Correct.
and the fire district.
Those are all part of the conditions right now.
That all of those are,
So the 9 months is a new one that we can add.
Start date is when they get all the rest of the permits.
Correct.
So we don't start it now until they can start working again.
Yes.
did you do the motion?
I make a motion. Do I need to put in there, amend the time limit to make a motion
Yes,
to
they'll
approve
You're adding a condition to
and add a condition that it's a 9-month permit instead of 3?
upon start of the project.
And the 9-month not start until they've got all their other permits,
Okay.
KDOT and state permits.
Okay, so your motion is to approve case number DEV-19-003 with an added condition to allow it to be for 9 months, and that all the necessary permits and legal descriptions be
The start date.
be the official start date when that's all approved.
Yep.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, voting?
Aye.
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 All right, motion passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, guys.
All righty, for Public Works and the KDOT agreement for controlling the noxious weeds in the KDOT right-of-ways.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Dave.
Public Works is requesting approval of the agreement with KDOT for spraying noxious weed in KDOT right-of-way. The Kansas Department of Transportation contracts with Leavenworth County Noxious Weed Department to spray state-owned right-of-way within Leavenworth County for noxious weeds. The only change to this agreement from last year's agreement was the labor rate was increased from $25 per hour to $27 per hour. Otherwise, it's the same agreement as 2018.
We've done this for
Does every
Ever.
county do it this way? Does the state have every other county do it kind of the same way?
I'm assuming so, yeah.
Okay.
If
I
the
know
county's
we've-
capable of doing
I
it.
knew we've done this forever.
Right, but, and your question, I'm not sure all other counties do
Okay.
it.
If they
Because you
have.
do see some spray rigs that KDOT has.
Right.
That's what I was wondering, if this is normal or for.
We probably
most
do it
counties.
cheaper.
Probably.
We don't do a lot of it. I mean, it's not a moneymaker for us. It just,
No, and they do a lot of mechanical control anyways.
it
on
helps.
mowing.
Yeah, I mean, it
Other noxious
helps
weeds.
KDOT, plus it helps us keep the noxious weeds down within the county. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Okay.
Does this include I-70?
No.
No.
Okay. We don't do I-70?
No.
Okay.
Just the state highways that run through the county.
5 and the rest of them.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have any issues with
State Avenue, that's the big one, because you got the median
Yeah,
to do.
that'd be the biggest one. It's 400 feet wide.
Yeah. Any other questions on the KDOT agreement?
Motion to approve the KDOT agreement with noxious weeds?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the KDOT agreement? Seeing none, voting?
Aye.
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 All right, thank
Hey,
you.
David, I had a question from somebody about neighborhood watch signs. Where do you get them at? I know we don't sell them. I
I
know
was
we
gonna
don't.
say, that's,
Years ago, had a program where you got them through, I believe, them, and
Yeah,
then we put them up, and then now we don't put them up.
yeah, I don't recall ever even seeing any of
Oh, I'm
those out in
talking
the
a long
county.
time ago.
I think there has to be a formal program.
Huh?
I think there's a formal program for Neighborhood Watch.
Okay, but I was just, people were asking where they get the signs. So,
If they engage with working with their local law enforcement in a Neighborhood Watch
Mhm.
program, they can get those through that program.
Yeah, I'm not aware if the sheriff's department has
oh, this was
any
back
type
in,
of neighborhood
this
watch
was in,
programs.
this was before we had street signs up. This was, no, I'm serious, it was in the early 80s, mid-80s.
Recent meeting that I had that included somebody from the sheriff's department was basically pointing them to the county for information on neighborhood signs, because that's not something that the sheriff's
All
department
right,
does.
and I'm not sure that we can even put them in the right-of-way now, because it's not a sign.
Right, it's not a standard.
It's not a regulatory or an MUTC, you know, the MUTCD manual.
If they wanted to put it off the right of
Off
way
the
on
right-of-way a
somebody's
little
private
bit,
property,
yeah.
then that would
I
probably
think that's
be
where we
allowed.
had an issue before. We were putting them in the right-of-way, and it didn't meet the Uniform Traffic Control Manual.
So if they wanted to get their own, they just need to get the guidelines from you all as to where they can place them on the road.
Mhm. A lot of people were putting them on their fence post after that, on their corner posts and stuff. But, yeah, at the beginning of it, we did do it. The sheriff's department, I believe, they got the signs through the sheriff's department, and they brought them out to us, and we put them up. But then we quit doing that. But like I said, I don't know where they got the signs.
You want to contact the city, Dave? Find out, because I know they.
Well, I mean, we have
there's-
sign suppliers. We have a
Yeah,
list of
there's
sign
places
suppliers,
online
and
you
I'm
can
sure
go
they'll make you
and
any
find
sign.
signs, yeah.
And in fact, at the time, I think we were getting them from the Lansing Correctional Facility.
I'm pretty sure you can order those online.
Yeah. But,
I just know that there is a formal program for the Neighborhood Watch. I mean, or there was. I don't know if there, do you know, Mr. Spellman?
No, I don't think there is through the sheriff's office.
Did-
I think the way it was set up, like Lumber Police or Lansing Police would have a community thing, and then they would
Right.
train them, and then they put the
mhm.
Yeah, because there used to be training involved with putting together a Neighborhood Watch program, is my point. It wasn't just to put up the sign.
Put up a sign to deter people, yeah.
Right.
Okay. And the other day at the work session, we were told we didn't have an 18-foot wide road. I measured the driving surface. The road top is 18-foot wide on 127th Street.
There's probably areas where it narrows down.
I narrowed
Yeah.
3 spots, 18 foot.
Yeah, we made it as wide as, if you notice where the banks are, we made that road as wide as possible.
Well, I didn't
through those
measure where the
areas.
banks were. We do have a driving surface that is 18 foot.
Yeah, we have 18-foot wide roads within the county, that's for sure, yes.
Well, I'm talking about this road I was specifically talking about, the Blacktop Road, 127th Street.
Okay. Yeah, there are areas where it had to be narrowed down, yes, because of features that were out there.
All right, just want to make sure that you guys knew that we have 18-foot wide road.
There are some.
So.
Back on the
Thank you,
signs.
Dave. Oh, you need somebody to sign that? I will.
We don't make signs anymore since Jack Butters.
We make
our own road signs. We make the road signs, right?
We make some.
We still, okay.
Yeah, the standard ones.
Okay, okay.
We have a plotter and all that.
Okay, that's what I thought.
But
we don't order everything.
No.
Okay.
We'll order blanks.
Yeah, okay. The new reflective finish.
Yeah. That on just one, David?
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, David.
thanks. Did you, has everyone looked over this defense?
I looked over it. Is
And
there anybody here
I don't,
from them?
don't
to talk about?
maybe,
No, the organization was brought to my attention by
Mhm.
Paul Kramer with the city of Leavenworth, who was going to be here yesterday, but
He's
couldn't
here.
be.
He's
Oh,
here
he is?
today.
he's
Yeah.
sitting back here in the corner.
Oh, there he is.
That's what I was gonna say. Maybe
Okay,
the
he
city-
might be able to give
Shed some light on what makes this
a little
worth
bit
it.
more information about the organization, because I brought it to the county to see if we might be interested in.
The city's a member of this?
We're talking about the Association of Defense Communities?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we've been a member, I think, now for, I think this is our 4th year. Yeah, so tell you a little bit about it. So it's an organization, as it sounds, of, it's not just communities, but it's Chamber of Commerce, military groups. A lot of these large cities with large bases have separate setup groups, but a lot of cities, counties, are members of this, and it's sort of a best practices, an organization that all have military installations in their communities. There's a daily newsletter that keeps you up to date on budget items. The big one last year was all the issues with drinking water around Air Force bases because of some contaminants and where to get information. So it's really an information sharing organization. And then also they have annually, they have 2 national summits and installation innovations conferences where you can participate in different tracks of cities with smaller bases or Air Force bases or Army bases. You learn about what the Pentagon's doing, what the direction the military's going. So you can sort of really learn what's going on and maybe where the Department of the Army wants to go over the next 5 years and how you can position your community to take advantage of certain things. It's really just good to be in that sort of atmosphere of understanding all the different facets of being a community that borders or has a military installation as your neighbor. And it's also a good resource. You can ask questions. If you hear something, how does this impact us? You can reach out to that organization and they can sort of, I guess, translate sometimes Pentagon or DOD speak into what it can mean for a local community.
Well, I think Fort's very important to our community.
I do too.
And it's not a lot of money, but you feel that the cost is worth what you've got out of it for the last 4 years?
Absolutely, I do. We've chosen to not just be members, but we do go to the annual, the summit or the installation innovation event to again, our state sends people. The current, it was Perry Wiggins is the governor's military, the head of the governor's military council, retired 3-star who lives in the state, and so he's part of that group too. So it also gives you a chance to network with it, with your state, but then with also communities in your area.
Thank you, Paul.
Well, I don't know if the 2 of you were involved with much discussion on the Kansas County Commission Association.
They talked about that last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what did you glean from that discussion?
We're not members of that.
We are not, yes.
Yeah. And after the discussion we had last week, I was going to look into that a lot more because it sounds like we should be.
Okay.
I think so too. I mean, by what we were hearing, but we can kind of look into it.
And they were talking about how it interacted with the federal government more, which that and this, I think we need to take every advantage.
Well, I wasn't aware of the Kansas County Commission Association interacting with the federal government.
Yeah, that's what they were talking about.
That's what they were talking about at that, but
Okay.
That's what, we can look into it more,
Yeah.
but I think I agree with
Because see, we
Commissioner.
tabled that until we found out more
Right.
about it. and
They were
that's-
talking about how they were the voice for the counties and DC. So we need to look into that a little more.
Okay.
Well, that might be more the Association of Counties too, but, there's just the difference between the one for the county commissioners.
But I say, we belong to the Ks.
Right.
We
Yeah.
just don't belong to the Kansas County Commission Association.
Right.
And I'm not sure how many meetings that
It didn't sound
entails,
like
how
there's
many
any.
conferences that is,
Well,
but,
That's what we were going to check on.
all right.
but that's,
Okay.
but aside from, I just think that would be a greater advantage to us if we wanted to decide between the two, would be to go with with the Association of Defense Communities, because we are
A
a defense community, and I
yes.
really feel like it would be something that we might be, and after 1 year, we might decide, no, or two, that this isn't really anything that's benefiting us, but we don't know if we don't become a part of it to find out.
And what was the cost to the Kansas County Commission Association? It was like
I think it's
$900
$950 or $900.
per commissioner, or just
It's
for?
just
No,
for the
for the
county.
county.
Thank you. I think that conversation actually started last year when we decided not to
Yes,
sign
yes,
up
and we
because
was going
the
to table it for the new
weren't
commissioners.
sure what direction, what we got out of it. So last year in 2018, we didn't sign up. For 2019, we haven't signed up. That's where that lies. This is a new item. Commissioner Cos brought it to my attention. I said we put it on the
Right.
agenda for consideration
Right.
by the board because this would be a membership of the county approved by the board.
Right.
And I just brought it up for discussion that, maybe we join this instead of the Kansas County Commissioner Association.
Maybe, like I said, we just found out about it last week, so we're going to
Okay.
look into it. Not saying we should join it. I'm saying we're just going to
All
look
right.
into it and find out if it's worth it or not
Well,
at this point.
We'll do some research on it
okay.
for you.
And that's what I was going to suggest on this too, is do some more research on it
Okay.
before we
You wanna
actually approve it.
Put it back on the agenda for next week, the week after? Couple weeks?
Yeah.
Okay.
What additional information are you looking for, Commissioner?
Just to find out more, talk to Paul some more about what they're actually getting out of it and seeing if it's not a lot of money, but
Okay.
just to have time to do more homework on it.
Okay.
That's fine.
Thank you.
And then put both of them on there, Kansas County Commission Association and Defense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Are we ready for the Leavenworth Port Authority appointment discussion?
Yes. It's my understanding that there is a spot that will be opening on the Leavenworth County Port Authority, or has opened.
Mhm.
As you, Commissioner Smith, will recall, and maybe the other commissioners are aware, I believe it was June, we sent in a proposal over to the city about how the county believed appointments should be made. And we did not receive any response to that. I just wanted to check the direction of the board now on how they would prefer to handle this appointment and appointments going forward.
Okay. Well, bring everybody up to speed. I believe it was in June, first part of June, that I believe we sent a draft to the city on a new Port Authority agreement on how appointments are made. It was going to suggest that the county make the appointments, being as we fund it, and I've never heard anything else after that. So, don't know what the two new commissioners' feelings are.
Well, I spoke with Mr. Kramer last week regarding the empty seat, the appointment, and I think that, and he can correct me if he's wrong, you can come up if you'd like, Paul, that I personally feel like we should put together a new agreement, because this is a, how many year old agreement, 60-year-old agreement, and that part of that agreement should try to have each one of the municipalities have a representative on the Port Authority.
Oh, I agree with that.
And I believe that for my conversation with Mr. Kramer, he was in agreement that that would be.
Yeah, I can't speak for my commission. And I'll just
Right.
briefly address the issue last June is what you're talking about is sort of a more holistic strategic approach to the board assignments, whether it's having different areas of the county, different cities, nominating, whatever it be, a whole new process. The only change to the process that was submitted last June was just essentially crossing the city out and saying the county appointed them. I think we would be much more open to a discussion about the best way to do it. So that was, I think, the thought of our commission. To look at, we understand it's a 1969 agreement, and it's a different world we live in, a different county we live in, and we need to plan for the future. So I think they'd be, the only thing that I would caution is with a new county commission starting in, or being elected in March, and then getting their feet wet, and then putting this group together or whatever, it could be a year. The Port Authority Board only has 5 members, having 1 seat vacant for a year. Probably not ideal, especially with 2 new business parks and the existing projects. It's good to have more input from those board members. So, you know, if we could put somebody in place, I know that in 2020, I believe there's a couple other seats, so I don't think it'd be, if we put somebody in place now, it'd be 4 years before other communities could have input. I believe there are a number of seats coming open in the next couple years that a new change could be implemented in. So those are my thoughts.
So are you recommending we look at expanding the board, that somebody from each city could serve on it?
And then maybe 2 at-large county, you know, 2 people at-large from the county, 1 from each, and then 2 at-large to both expand the size, and then kind of relook and, you know, maybe put together a team of people who study what the agreement should be and enter into it, you know, an agreement that is.
I think that's the discussion that started probably last January. And then we had some changes on the board and some differing opinions, and that's when we went to the, in June, when the proposal came out that we fund it, we appoint. And that was the proposal.
And I don't want to discount what we got in June too, because I know Mr. Van Paris did a lot of work on updating all the statutes, which is really a lot of work and good work. It was just that part about, like you talked about, maybe a expansion of the structure. That whole discussion never really happened. But as far as the updates too, there were some really needed updates too that I think the county did a good job with.
As it stands right now, we still operate under the 1960.
Right, and I think that we need to put together a new agreement. That's just my personal opinion. I don't.
Okay. And that draft was a new agreement. That was sent.
But it didn't, our issue, and I'm just speaking from the city here, our issue was that it did not speak about anything that Commissioner Kaj just talked about. Actually looking at what's the best way, is there a new way to do the board? Expansion, representation. It was simply just, besides the statutory updates, saying that the county shall have just essentially unilateral authority to do whatever they wanted with the board members.
So would the city be willing to, say, counter back with some other agreement? Or
I think we need to get together with if this is the consensus of the commission, I think that's a much more palatable way to start an agreement. I think we are very much willing to look toward the future of the Port Authority and change the composition of the board or how it's made up, if that's the true direction that the county commission believes is important.
Which I really think that it is. I think that we just kind of need to relook at it and.
So what day are we all going to get together and do this?
Set up a work session or via county administrator and city. However you want to do it. And I'm all for what Vicky's talking about, expanding the board. I know there was some talk about the previous board wanting to dissolve the Port Authority, but I'm of the opposite idea that
Right,
I
think every city should have a representative on there.
Yeah,
and I do too. That's why I said I think that if we had all the cities and then 2 at large,
yeah, the only
that would kind of give some, you know, some.
And I know sometimes it's hard to find bodies to fill those positions, but with the caveat, we don't put elected officials on the board, I think.
Right, no elected officials on that, just a citizen board, and.
I'm all for that.
So In the meantime, we have a vacancy.
Expanding the board that'd be probably something the county council would have to weigh in on.
Is that a legislative approval?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of this commission, David Van Paris. I think you have very wide latitude as to how to construct a port authority. Fortunately, you're under the wire as far as the forming port authorities. You do not require additional legislative authority to accomplish what I think would be the common goal between the parties.
Then we just need to figure out who we want to have meet and discuss it. And I mean, if we don't want, I'll be there.
Jeff will be there.
And I'm sure that we can probably have, well, of course, the administrators, but also city commissioner, mayor, or
Port Authority board members.
Port Authority board members, just
city staff.
Yeah, I'd want to.
Yeah, can you
past
take it back?
experience? 1 or 2 point people from different organizations probably
Right.
makes it works better than an enormous group of 20 or so. But yeah, a couple key persons or a key person from each organization is probably an important thing to have.
Okay. Do we have a date? Do you want to take it back to your commission first? Do you want to?
I guess my question would be, in the meantime, it was Ann Hoynes who served very well on the Port Authority board, has been off for a while now. I would defer to you on if you wanted to wait until the input from your new commissions is certainly your choice, but I just hate to have a board. Sometimes these processes take a while, and then maybe we could try to get this done in 3 to 6 months, which I know sometimes to the public sounds like a long time, but just coordinating schedules and getting meetings and circulating drafts takes time on these kind of things, amending an organization, then getting formal approval from the different entities. Sort of your thoughts on the fact that there is 20% of the Port Authority is vacant right now.
Yeah, I didn't mean hold up.
No.
Filling a position for what we're talking about.
Would she be considered the Lansing area?
So we've never done it that way, and I would caution against trying to assign a Port Authority board member currently serving. Mr. Lineweaver is
kind of
Lansing. Businesses in Lansing.
Right.
There's just different dynamics, but he's also, I would almost look countywide. He does as much work for us as he does for Lansing, and I'm not sure where he lives. Maybe he lives in the county. So we've never tried to assign a Port Authority board member, de facto, who they represent. The whole point of the Port Authority is no matter who sits on there, no matter where they're from, you look out for the good of the county first, the entire county on balance. Now, if I was going to talk,
Oxy and Linwood may not see it that way,
though. Maybe, I can't speak.
Which is why, if we can put together another one, then we will have individuals
Right.
from there that are designated, that is a designated place.
A representative of that area. I agree.
Is Baser still not?
Vernon Fields represents the Baser area.
Well, Baser's not on the LCDC, but they could still be represented on the Port Authority. I'm just saying that's
Vernon is on the Port Authority.
Okay. No,
Yeah.
I'm not.
And that's certainly a discussion, as part of the criteria, no elected officials, which you brought up, good standing membership of LCDC. A thought from us is that's buy-in to a county organization. But again, that'd probably be a discussion among the group of talking about the organization. We would certainly push for that. Being a part of countywide activity is a requirement for having a seat at the Port Authority table, but I can't speak for my commission.
I think it would be a good idea for the Board of Commissioners to come up with some key items that you want to see addressed in any kind of new agreement. Then we can schedule maybe a work session just for us so that you can all discuss those key items, come to a consensus on what you believe is key to the Port Authority, and then that way you can give direction to myself and Mr. Van Paris.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Work out an agreement, and maybe Paul could do the same thing over at the city.
Yeah.
And then that way you have staff working on it, which we have a little more time sometimes to throw at these things.
And you're not trying to coordinate 30 people.
Right. And it would probably speed the process up.
That sounds good to me. So, however it works, I just would like to see it done.
If you would like to do that, if you'd like to do that, then I think maybe give you guys a couple of weeks to look over what we have, which we can get you a copy of the current agreement and the one that was proposed back in June. Look that over, and then maybe just jot down some things that you think are key features, and then we'll have a work session. I don't know if you think 2 weeks is enough time for that, or
I think
you'd
so.
like longer than that.
And
I
how
think
long?
the discussion of adding somebody per city actually came up probably April last year, and Commissioner Smith brought that up when we were looking at redoing the agreement. So I think there's already been some discussion on it. I think it has some good value. So if that would work for you guys, we can do that. Give you 2 weeks to just look over what we have and come up with your thoughts on key, and then we'll have a work session so you can come to a consensus.
When would you like to schedule the work session?
We'll look over the calendar and
Okay.
put it on. You'll approve
Just
it.
let us know.
You'll approve it a week in advance, so it won't be, sometime next week we'll approve the work session.
Okay.
But do we want to go ahead and fill the position?
Well,
Or
we would
wait
have to look
after
for
that?
somebody, and the question then is, the way it kind of worked informally in the past was, it just kind of alternated. So the city would come up with a proposal, and then the county would agree, then the county would come up with somebody, the next person, and the city would agree. And that's kind of how it worked informally. I'm not saying there was a formal process informally. I don't know, I mean, I think the last two probably came from the county. I know Vernon was one of our recommendations. So if you informally wanted to continue that process, then I think it'd be for the city to actually make a recommendation. If not, we can certainly do whatever way the board.
Well, I think for the time being, it would only, just to keep things running as smooth as possible, to go ahead and keep up with what the tradition was, and then we can work on putting together a new agreement that kind of spells out those details of how that happens. And
I think it might be a good idea to let whoever is being appointed know that this process has started.
Right.
And that when we all get together and we can come to a new agreement, it's quite possible that we would look at additional appointments, or we're having to replace some of the people who are on there now to fill that requirement if it was one from each city type thing.
The last two was Vernon Fields, and was it Mr. Patswall?
Yeah, we reapproved Patswell, extended his agreement.
Okay.
so
it was one from the city and basically one from the county.
And that's the interesting part too, because the county actually approved nominated Bob Patsfold first, and then we approved it. It didn't come from the city first to the county, even though Bob is sort of viewed as because he was a city employee, but the county actually initiated the action on Bob. I think we were asked, do you have any ideas? Because that's how this works, and Jeff made a great point. There's no pay, there's no travel, you got to pay for your own lunch. I mean, and you're asking somebody to essentially become aware of economic development throughout the county. So it's not always been a sought-after position because it does require a lot of work, and so volunteers are always hard to.
I know, but it's always good lunch, though.
It is usually pretty good lunch.
So do we need to advertise this position?
It's again, if you want to leave it to the city to appoint this one, then it'll be up to the city to recruit. If the board wants to take the approach that we're still appointing all members, then that's your decision.
And it's the city's turn.
Based on tradition?
Based on what we've
I believe based on tradition, it would be there.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so that we don't hold
We've never just appointed somebody.
It still comes to the
Right.
We would float a couple names.
Right.
And the county's always done that to us too. Here's who we're thinking about. So, just to give the public an idea of, you would know well before we put it on the agenda who it would be if we go with that.
So, speaking for the city, you would not be opposed if we recommended somebody or we gave a name, or?
No, I'm saying whoever's turn it is usually floats the names.
Okay.
To the other entity to see if there's any conflicts, because sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And we do try to do a really good job, as you guys do, of vetting or taking into consideration. But if it was our turn and we follow tradition, we would probably show a few names to you rather than the other way around.
But would the city advertise it, post it?
No.
You would not? Okay. Or would the Port Authority advertise and post that they have an opening and anyone?
We're sort of doing that now, I guess, in a public meeting.
That's right.
We could any email that comes to me with a name, I'll look at. Obviously. But as far as a formal application process, and maybe that's something the committee talks about.
Right, that's why I said there's.
Okay.
I think what we have found on all of our boards, I'm sure the city is the same, is that typically your best candidates come from direct contact with somebody who's either works with the city or is on an elected body. Advertising for them, we don't typically generate a lot of interest because people don't know what they are unless you go talk to them. So,
Yeah.
but that would be the city's prerogative on how they chose to recruit to fill a position. That, if that's the board's direction, then we would just need y'all to have a consensus that that's how we want to proceed.
I just think for the time being, that just seems to me like the way to go, just so that, and then we can get our,
Yeah, government runs slow enough.
Yeah, so everything else we're talking about, we don't want to hold up.
We don't
right.
wanna hold up
We
the
want to move
appointment.
forward with what we want to do, but we need to go ahead and let this happen, and I think that's probably the best way for it to happen.
Okay.
We look forward to working with the group to update that agreement.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Do we need to do a motion on this, Mark?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, it would be my opinion no formal motion is required at this time. If the board is in consensus that the issue of the Port Authority is deserving of further study, you could request that staff look at the issue and present you options that are available to you.
Okay. I believe we have a consensus.
I think we have a consensus just to
Okay,
let the
all
city
right.
move
I
forward
agree.
with.
And we'll move forward. We do have an executive session, but before we go in there, does commissioners want to give us an update on your last week? You went to the commission
Yes,
deal.
we did.
The commissioner school?
Yeah.
Commissioner school.
Yeah, there's a
Did
lot.
you pass? Huh?
Yeah, what do they say? You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it was well worth it.
Yeah, there was a lot of information to take in and to learn, and
I think I came back with more questions than answers, but
Yeah.
I think what I would mention is they do have an actual academy where each year they put on classes, so it's not just a one and done
Right.
type thing if you want it. It's not a
Yeah.
requirement, but they do these classes throughout the state where you can go and, I think they call it academy because if you attend every class, you get some kind of certificate
yeah,
at the
they
end.
provided us with the schedule for that, and
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
That'd
if
be
that's
interesting.
something the commissioners are interested in, if you just let us know via Becky or myself, either one, we can, as those come up, we'd be happy to help you schedule those,
okay.
if you're
Yeah.
interested.
I'm going to the first one on fence viewing.
We don't want to do that.
There was some discussion on counties changing from 3 to 5 commissions, so that was an interesting parts of conversations that happened. Saline County has also moved from 3 to 5 commissioners.
year.
Only their commissioner election won't be until November. So, and Leavenworth County opted for March, so.
Yep. And they had several speakers that had been commissioners for over 30 years, reelected in their counties. They had a lot of words of wisdom. So it was.
But how
it's
big
well
was
worth
their,
going
how
to.
big was their county then?
Not very big.
3,000 or
Okay.
4,000 people. It was, that's why I said it was very interesting, but I sat at a table with a young man who was from Riley County, so newly elected, so,
Yeah.
which is a very similar demographic population and next to a fort, so that was, so there were
The
conversations.
deal I went to yesterday said 82 out of 105 counties lost population
Right.
in Kansas. So we're very fortunate to have a growing county.
Right.
A week ago Tuesday, I went to that Deer Ridge. They had a small business speaker there. It was sponsored by Grove Leavenworth County and the TBA, the Tongi Business Association. That was on a Tuesday night. That was an interesting, it was a good speaker. And then Baser, I went to their city council meeting on Wednesday and met their new city administrator. She's on board now. And last Friday, I went to the LCDC annual meeting, and they had a speaker there also. And on Friday night, there was a Kansas for Life candlelight vigil outside the courthouse here. I attended that. There was a large crowd. It was pouring down rain. It was miserable conditions, but it was a big turnout.
Was that in the paper, John? I didn't see it. Yeah,
Okay.
I saw it.
We'll contact you next year, John. All right, invite you. You can hold a candle and a camera. How's that? That was Friday night. Okay, Tuesday went to the MARC meeting, and then Wednesday, of course. And then Tuesday night, Tonganoxie canceled their city council meeting, so I was unable to attend that. Went to Topeka yesterday for the local government days, listened to the Lieutenant Governor speak, Lynn Rogers, and then there was some discussion about some other representatives and a senator was there was three people up there speaking or being asked questions on how they think the session's going to go. There's a lot of things coming up on the session, and I was really surprised for some of their predictions on what was going to happen this session. So, but it was a good trip out there, and it was interesting. And let's see, Friday night, Linwood Elementary School has a fundraiser they have a dinner. It's a big turnout for playground equipment, I guess. It's good food, and it's a large turnout, so I hope everybody can go to that. And I don't believe I have anything else.
Well, also, I'm sorry, Leavenworth, the Ladies' Night Out, which is sponsored by, I believe, the Leavenworth Times, but the Ladies' Night Out is Saturday. It starts at, I think, 4 p.m., and all the proceeds will go to fund two of the organizations that the county has provided support for, the Alliance Against Family Violence and CASA. So I would encourage, I plan to attend, and I would encourage others to attend. It's a really fun event, and men can come. It's Ladies' Night Out, but in the past I've seen gentlemen there as well. So.
And what night is that?
It's Saturday.
This Saturday?
This Saturday.
Okay. And where at?
It's at the Heritage Center.
Oh, okay.
Is the Alliance open back up now?
They have not opened their doors yet. They've hired their executive director, and they're still working out just a few of the kinks and making sure that the state funding is approved and in place, and they hope in the very near future to open the doors.
They do have a new director on board, and they've got a building, and I really thought they'd be up and going.
They're waiting on some of the grant funding to get into place, and that's one of the holdups right now. And as soon as that's, there were issues that have to do with that because grants that are provided to support, like CASA and the Alliance, they're reimbursement grants. And so you have to spend the money and then report to the state and receive the reimbursement. Well, sometimes there's a 6 month to 9 month delay from the time those the forms are submitted to the state to get reimbursement before the reimbursement check comes in. Well, as any of us know, it's very difficult when you have expensed out all of your reserves to keep going if you haven't received that reimbursement check, so they're going to make sure that that's all in place and that's going to be happening before they start up again. So
I believe they were going to go to the city council meeting in Tonganoxie last Tuesday to give an update, but they canceled because of the weather. But if you have any questions, you see Melinda Harbour all the time. She's on the board, so she can get you up to speed on that.
One thing, while you were talking about going to Mid-America Regional Council, we have a month before we need to really resolve this, but since you brought it up, I thought it might be a good time. In the past, Commissioner Holland had filled the county spot at the workforce meetings and then also attended Mid-America Regional Council meetings. I didn't know if one of the new commissioners wanted to take that role so we can make sure you get them signed up.
Yeah, I don't have a problem at all going to what Commissioner Holland was going to, but as far as the workforce one, I thought maybe that would be more in line with your expertise, but it's fine with me too.
Not really in line with my expertise, but I mean, I kind of looked at it like I know that we're going to need to be doing some, as we're working on mental health and some of the issues that we're going to be working on with that task force, that I was going to probably be spending some time in Topeka. And so I thought maybe it would be a good idea if, for the time being, that you and Commissioner Smith would do the mark, and then we can revisit that when we have the 5 commissioners, and then I would be more than happy to make the trips back and forth to Topeka to meet with legislators.
And did you You got the stuff out of your mailbox and brought
Yes.
back from there? Okay. I had a couple pages folded over I thought you'd be interested in.
Yeah, I mean, if there's something that I'm interested in, I'll jump on board and go. But I just thought that, formally, that if we kind of figured out how we do that, I don't have a problem with traveling and going for because I'm sure that there's going to be several trips that we have to make to Topeka to talk to people about some of the things that we're going to want to try to do.
That's fine with me. I just thought I'd offer if that was something you're
Okay.
interested in.
Sounds good.
We'll get Mr. Commissioner Culbertson's, first of all, we'll get their information over to Mid-America Regional Council and the workforce to make sure they start contacting you, and then.
I think you already said that.
And I'll look over what you
Okay.
gave me. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, there's some interesting stuff, and it
Okay.
shows some funding where it goes,
Oh, well, cool.
but not to us.
Uh-huh. Well, see, but those are some of the things that we may need to start looking at, huh?
Okay. All right. All right, we were ready for our executive session. Does anyone have a motion in front of them?
I move that this board recess from open session and go into a closed executive session to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel as justified by KSA 75-4319B1, and that this board resume open session in this meeting room at
20 minutes, do it?
Let's just say 10:45, just so everybody can take a quick break.
at 10:45 a.m. Present in the executive session will be Commissioner Jeff Culbertson, Vicki Cos, and Doug Smith, County Administrator Mark Lawfrey, and Senior County Counselor David Van Paris.
Have a motion?
That was the motion.
Is that the motion? I second.
Yep.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion on going in executive session? Voting?
Aye.
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 We've returned from executive session. We're now in open session. No decisions were made at this time.
10:45.
It's 10:45.
I'm,
Ready to make another motion?
I didn't pick up my paperwork with me. You want to make the motion, Jeff, to go back in?
I make a motion that we go back into executive session for 15 minutes.
We have to read that statute.
Oh, I don't have it with me.
You got the statute? We have to read that.
I move that this board recess from open session and go into the closed executive session to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel as justified in KSA 75-4319B1, and that this board resume open session in the meeting room at 11:05.
Yeah.
That work?
Second?
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion on going into executive session? Seeing none, I'll vote.
Aye.
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 Board's returning from executive session at 11:05. No decisions were made. The topic was stuck to the topic that we went in for, non-elected personnel. We're in open session again.
Mr. Chairman, members of this commission, one item of business you may wish to consider this morning would be consideration of the adoption of Resolution 2019-2. I believe you each have a copy of that resolution. The resolution references the creation of the Office of County Administrator by a prior commission, the decision by this board that the continuation and filling of that office is in the best interest of the citizens of the county, and specifically directs and authorizes the chairman to sign an agreement with Mr. Mark Lawfrey for Mr. Lawfrey to provide those services. The adoption of the resolution would, in essence, affect the execution of the agreement by the county. Should Mr. Lawfrey then counter-execute the agreement, it would go into effect. And a copy of the contract is a public document and would be provided to those requesting it.
Yes, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve Resolution 2019-2.
Have a motion?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on Resolution 2019-2?
Nope.
No?
Voting?
Aye.
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 Mr. Chairman, an appropriate copy of the agreement will be presented to you for signature and then forwarded to Mr. Lawfrey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more business to discuss before this board? I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Voting?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.